It was a sunny Tuesday morning in June when Captain Jane Smith parked her car at the Air Force Base in San Diego. At 32 years old, Jane had worked hard to reach her position as a pilot in the Air Force. She took pride in her jet black hair that she always kept tied neatly in a bun under her hat. But when Jane arrived for her shift that morning, things took an unexpected turn. She was abruptly called into a meeting with the commander and several other high-ranking officers. They informed her that a new regulation required all pilots to have their heads shaved completely bald. Jane was shocked. She proposed with them to make an exception, but the policy was firm. Overcome by disbelief, Jane felt a swell of emotion rise up within her. "This is outrageous," she yelled, no longer able to hold back. "After everything I've done for this unit, this is how you treat me." The commanding officers shifted uncomfortably, but held their ground. The policy was not their own personal decision, but they had to enforce it. Jane continued, her voice rising as anger overtook her. "I have dedicated years of my life to becoming one of the Air Force's top pilots. And this is the recognition I get. You want to strip away my identity and make me a laughingstock?" She pointed a shaking finger at the commander. "I refuse to go through with this. Either you make an exception for me, or you can consider this my resignation." The commander's face was unsympathetic and stern. "Captain Smith, this policy is non-negotiable. Your personal preferences do not matter." He leaned forward, his voice hard. "You will comply with the regulation immediately, or face court-martial for insubordination." "Do I make myself clear?" Stunned, Jane snapped to attention out of instinct. "Yes, sir," she replied weakly. The other officers regarded her coldly. "There will be no exceptions or special treatment," barked the general. "If you cannot follow orders, you have no place in my Air Force. Now, either consent to the haircut or remove yourself from duty." Jane trembled, feeling small under their harsh glares. This was not the reasonable discussion she expected. Their tone left no room for debate. With effort, she kept her voice steady. "I apologize for my outburst. As an officer, I will obey the regulation." "Wise choice, Captain," said the commander coldly. "Sergeant, take Captain Smith to the barbershop immediately and ensure every inch of hair is shaved from her head. Do not stop until she is completely bald." "Yes, sir," barked the sergeant. He grabbed Jane roughly by the arm and marched her down the hallway. Jane struggled to keep up as the sergeant pulled her along, his grip like iron on her arm. Her mind was blank with dread about what was coming. When they entered the barber shop, the sergeant shoved Jane down into the chair and handed the barber the electric clippers. "Shave her head clean," he ordered. "Leave nothing but bare skin." The barber nodded silently and went to work. Jane sat motionless, her heart pounding as the buzz of the clippers filled the room. She watched piles of her jet black hair fall to the floor. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she did not make a sound. In minutes, it was done. The barber swept away the last remnants of hair as Jane ran a hand over her pale, exposed scalp. "Check her head," barked the sergeant. The barber turned Jane's head from side to side, ensuring every last hair was gone. "She's clean," the barber confirmed. "Good," said the sergeant sternly. "Now listen closely, Captain Smith. Your vain attachment to your hair has made you defiant. You will obey orders without question or face harsh punishments in the future." Jane sat motionless, staring at the floor in shame and anger as the sergeant berated her. "Your rank and accomplishments do not put you above regulations." He continued, "You are still an enlisted member of the United States Air Force. Is that clear?" "Yes, Sergeant," Jane replied, her voice hollow. "Yes, what?" he barked. "You will address me as yes, Sergeant, or no, Sergeant." "Now, is that clear?" "Yes, Sergeant," Jane said again, biting back tears. "Report back to the commander's office immediately," the sergeant ordered. And fix your uniform. You're a disgraceful sight." The sergeant scowled as he looked Jane up and down. "That flight suit is too nice for the likes of you now. You need a uniform fitting your new rank." He handed Jane a folded stack of clothes. She unfolded them to find a set of plain cotton shirt and pants along with a pair of black boots. "Change into these." Now the sergeant barked. Jane's face burned with shame as she reluctantly removed her flight suit and changed into the new uniform in front of the sergeant. The pants and shirt were uncomfortably rough against her skin, and the boots were a size too small, pinching her feet. "Much better." The sergeant nodded. "This cheap recruit's uniform will remind you of your proper place from now on. Report to the commander at once." Jane felt degraded standing there in the ill-fitting uniform that signified her loss of status, but she had no choice but to obey. She marched back down the hall, the too short pants chafing her legs with each step. She vowed to earn back her flight suit no matter what it took. When Jane reached the commander's office, the sergeant followed her inside. "Captain Smith reporting as ordered," Jane said, standing in attention. The sergeant stepped forward. "Captain, from now on you will maintain a bald head at all times per regulation. I will inspect it daily." He leaned in close to Jane's face. "Every morning you will shave your head smooth in front of me. If I detect even the slightest double, there will be severe consequences. Do you understand?" Jane swallowed hard. "Yes, Sergeant. I understand." "Good. We will begin inspections tomorrow at 600 hours. For now, return to your barracks and reflect on your obedience to authority." Jane left the office burning with anger and humiliation. But she knew that her very career now depended on subjugating herself to the sergeant's cruel inspections. She had no choice left but compliance. The next morning, Jane reported to the barracks bathroom at precisely 0600 hours. The sergeant was already waiting, clippers in hand. "Let's see if you can follow orders today, Captain," he snarled. "Take off your hat and lean over the sink." With trembling hands, Jane removed her hat, exposing her bald head. The sergeant ran his hand roughly over her scalp, checking for any trace of stubble. Finding none, he barked, "Lather up your head and shave it. Do not stop until it's perfectly smooth. I'll be watching." Jane squeezed shaving cream onto her head, trying to control her shaking hands. She took up her razor and began gliding it across her scalp. As the sergeant watched intently, after she had shaved every inch, the sergeant grabbed her chin and turned her head from side to side, scrutinizing it. Seemingly satisfied, he slapped her hat against her chest. "Get dressed and get out of my sight," he growled. "I expect the same bare head tomorrow morning for inspection." Dismissed. Jane donned her hat and left, her head throbbing from the close shave. She reported to her duties, trying to ignore the burning looks and whispered jokes from the other pilots about her bald head. At the end of the day, the sergeant was waiting by her barracks. "Not so fast, Captain," he said. "It's time for your evening head shave." Jane's heart sank. "But Sergeant, I already shaved this morning as ordered." "Are you questioning my authority?" he barked. "You will shave again now. Every night at 2100 hours before lights out. Be thankful I'm not making you shave multiple times per day." Yet with no choice but compliance, Jane entered the barracks bathroom and shaved her already smooth head again as the sergeant observed. "I think you missed a spot," he noted cruelly, pointing to a non-existent patch of stubble. Ashamed, Jane relathered and shaved the area again and again until the amused sergeant was satisfied. "Report to me in the morning for your next inspection," he reminded her as he left. "I want that head polished." Exhausted and demoralized, Jane collapsed into her bunk. Just one day of this routine had broken her spirit. She wondered how long she could endure the sergeant's cruel domination of her body and dignity before she broke completely.